Tonight, breaking news, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo charged with a sex crime. Cuomo now facing possible jail time on the forcible touching charge, accused of groping a woman at the governor's mansion last year. It comes just 2 months after he resigned from office following a report by the state attorney general that found he sexually harassed nearly a dozen women, including staffers. The statement just in from Cuomo himself. Breaking news out of Washington, the battle between progressives and moderates forcing another delay to the president's agenda. No vote this week. The new reporting just in as President Biden is set to leave for Europe, appearing on the world stage with his domestic agenda in limbo. The new image tonight, Alec Baldwin resurfacing, seen with his family in Vermont, thousands of miles from the investigation into that deadly movie set shooting. Prosecutors not ruling out criminal charges, and the Santa Fe district attorney telling Top Story investigators are now focused on how a live round got inside the gun. Mid-air assault, the airline passenger taken into custody, accused of punching a flight attendant in the face. The flight forced to make an emergency landing as airlines report an unprecedented rise in unruly passengers. Breaking his silence, the hockey player bravely coming forward, speaking about the alleged sexual abuse he suffered at the hands of a former Chicago Blackhawks coach. What he says happened when he tried to report it. And the candy warning ahead of Halloween, the products that look like popular treats but actually contain potentially dangerous levels of THC. One mother's message to other parents after her child was left hospitalized. Top Story starts right now. And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. We begin Top Story with breaking news. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been charged with forcible touching, a misdemeanor sex crime. The criminal complaint filed in Albany alleging Cuomo placed his hand under the shirt of a victim and groped her. The alleged incident taking place at the governor's mansion in Albany last December. If convicted, he could face up to a year in prison. The three-term Democrat resigned in August, shortly after a report by the state attorney general's office found he had sexually harassed at least 11 current and former staffers. New York Attorney General Letitia James tonight saying the charges, quote, further validate the findings in our report. Cuomo's lawyer responding to the charges tonight saying the former governor has never assaulted anyone, adding, quote, this is not professional law enforcement, it's politics. Let's get right to NBC senior national correspondent Kate Snow, who leads us off tonight.
Former Governor Andrew Cuomo, once a star of the Democratic establishment, tonight facing a criminal charge for sexual misconduct. The misdemeanor criminal complaint says last December, on the second floor of the governor's mansion, Cuomo did intentionally and for no legitimate purpose forcibly place his hand under the blouse shirt of the victim and onto her intimate body part for the purposes of degrading and gratifying his sexual desires. Cuomo resigned in August after a blistering 165-page report from the state's attorney general detailing allegations by 11 women, from unwanted physical contact to inappropriate and harassing comments.
The hugs at first were hugs, and then they were hugs when he would pull me close to the point where he could feel my breast on his chest.
It's unclear which accuser is behind today's criminal charge, but many details appear to match the story told by Brittany Camiso, an executive assistant in the governor's office. She told investigators Cuomo's inappropriate contact escalated over time, one night hugging her too tightly.
That's when he put his hand up my blouse and cupped my breast over my bra.
After Cuomo resigned,
in my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone.
Camiso said it was a weight off her shoulders, but not enough.
He didn't take responsibility. He almost still had the attitude as though he is the victim. When he is not the victim, he is the victimizer.
All right, Kate Snow joins us now live in studio with more. And Kate, I understand you just got a statement from former Governor Cuomo's attorney.
Yeah, so you alluded to this earlier. Basically, he's saying that he never assaulted anyone. He's also talking about the sheriff's department in Albany that filed this criminal complaint today, basically accusing them of playing politics, saying that they have ulterior motives.
Yeah, the former governor saying this is all about politics. But what do we know what's next for him?
So November 17th, he's been issued a summons to appear. So we expect that he will appear on that date, November 17th. Unclear where he is tonight and whether we'll hear any more.
All right, Kate Snow leading us off here on Top Story. Great to have you in set. All right, joining us now is NBC News legal contributor and criminal defense attorney Danny Cevallos. Danny, thanks for joining Top Story. So based on what we know at this point and that lengthy report by the New York State Attorney General containing those numerous allegations of sexual harassment, do you think there are even more charges to come?
It is possible because that Attorney General's report was a kind of forecast, a blueprint, if you will, for any local district attorney, wherever those assaults allegedly happened, to bring criminal charges. After all, if you're a prosecutor and you have to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the Attorney General's office tells you, well, we've investigated and we think these events happened, that's almost serving your case up for you on a platter, even to meet that burden of beyond a reasonable doubt.
So we just heard from the former governor's attorney, Kate Snow, had that comment. We've heard the governor speak out before about these accusations. You're a criminal defense attorney. What do you think Cuomo's defense is here?
We already know. We heard it this summer when he responded to the Attorney General's report. It is some variation of, I didn't do it, and even if there was contact, it's not what you think it was. And ultimately, his defense is, I didn't know that it was bad if it was bad. I mean, that's really the forecast that he gave us this summer. But his primary defense is going to be, none of this happened. It's all trumped up.
So is there anything peculiar about what happened today? I mean, we are talking about a former governor here. This is a single misdemeanor charge. Is this the way it usually goes?
I mean, it's a single misdemeanor charge. It carries up to a year in prison. And for that reason, it's a greater than 6 months penalty, which means that he has a right to a jury trial. In Albany, after the arraignment, likely he will proceed. The next court date, ideally, would be the trial. That's the way I understand they proceed in Albany. I mean, will he get different treatment procedurally? Possibly, just because of the intense media coverage. The courts are going to have to make accommodations. So while in any high-profile case, procedure gets thrown out the window.
High-profile case, you've done a lot of these. Do you think the former governor actually goes to jail here?
Not likely. Even if he's convicted, it's a misdemeanor, potential jail sentence of up to a year. However, with a first-time offender, as Governor Cuomo surely is, he is not likely to get that year in prison, although it's always possible.
All right, Danny Cevallos for us. We thank you for your legal analysis. Danny, thank you. And we have breaking news out of Washington on the president's pitch to lawmakers to buy into his social safety net plan. There's now late word of a delay in the vote, leaving Biden's agenda in jeopardy. NBC News chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker reports.
After struggling with Democratic divisions over his multi-trillion-dollar spending plans, this morning, President Biden unveiling a new framework and urging Democrats to get his agenda back on track.
After months of tough and thoughtful negotiations, I know we have a historic economic framework.
Delaying his departure for key summits in Europe, the president first traveled to Capitol Hill. A source familiar with the meeting said he warned Democrats behind closed doors, "I don't think it's hyperbole to say that the House and Senate majorities and my presidency will be determined by what happens in the next week." Back at the White House, the president made his case.
No one got everything they wanted, including me. But that's what compromise is. That's consensus. And that's what I ran on.
The price tag of the social policy and climate plan, $1.75 trillion. It includes funding for universal pre-K, elder care, and a one-year extension of the enhanced child tax credit. But to cut the price tag down, many items were dropped, including free community college, prescription drug reform, and paid family and medical leave, a key proposal the president had been touting just last week.
We're one of the few industrial countries in the world that does not have paid leave.
Progressives had demanded a framework on the social spending and climate plan before they would support the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And tonight, some blasting the president's proposal, saying there were too many cuts.
Clearly, to my mind, it has some major gaps in it.
I felt a little bamboozled because this was not what I thought was coming today.
Many progressives saying they still don't trust moderate holdouts Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who today suggested the price tag was not too high.
We negotiated a good number that we worked off of.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi still not saying when she'll call a vote.
We have the text out there. We're on a path to get this all done.
Kristen Welker joins us now from outside the White House. And Kristen, I understand you have some breaking news.
That's right, Tom. Sources on Capitol Hill tell NBC News they are delaying the vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill until next week. Progressives will not vote on infrastructure until they can vote on both plans, infrastructure and the new framework, at the same time. They also want commitments from key moderate senators Manchin and Sinema that they'll support this new framework, and that just hasn't happened yet. Democrats can't lose a single vote in this Senate, with Republicans opposing what they say is a massive spending plan that will raise prices and hurt the economy. Look, Speaker Pelosi had urged her caucus to vote today to hand the president a win. It would have emboldened him on the world stage, and now he has to hold those critical summits overseas empty-handed, complicating his optics for a president whose domestic agenda right now, Tom, is still stalled.
And face some more tough questions overseas. All right, Kristen Welker on that breaking news. New developments in the deadly movie set shooting involving Alec Baldwin. The actor spotted today in Vermont, while investigators thousands of miles away in New Mexico focus on the two people who handled the revolver right before Baldwin pulled the trigger. Miguel Almaguer has more.
Tonight, the set of Rust is no longer a crime scene, but investigators have not cleared anyone on the set of wrongdoing. Alec Baldwin's fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins was accidental, but it should have been prevented by Assistant Director Dave Halls, and armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, says the sheriff.
These two people who handled the gun, it's their jobs to ensure safety. How is there a scenario in which they would not face criminal charges?
That's still to be determined. I think there's a certain threshold that needs to be met. She, as the armorer, in my mind, has the ultimate responsibility for the safety of the rounds that are being placed in that firearm.
Hannah Gutierrez-Reed told your investigators that there were no live rounds and should not have been any live rounds on that set. Does that seem to be like a false statement at this point?
It's not an accurate statement. We would like to get some follow-up and some clarification.
The Santa Fe District Attorney telling Tom about a theory investigators are examining behind the mistake.
Is this simply a case that possibly one live round got mixed in with either dummies or blanks? Is that what cost Helena her life?
It's very likely that is something that's one of the scenarios that we are exploring, and it is likely that that's what happened.
Given exclusive access to the sheriff and his lead investigators behind closed doors today,
we had stated about trying to wrangle up all, the 70 people.
Authorities confirm Baldwin, seen with his family in Vermont in photographs obtained by TMZ, will need to be questioned again. So will the two people responsible for ensuring the gun was safe, who have not responded for comment to NBC News.
It's definitely a tragedy, and in my mind, totally preventable.
A tragedy that could have criminal consequences.
Today, we asked the sheriff why it could take weeks and even months to bring criminal charges in this case. If it comes to that, he said the sheer number of people, about 100 that need to be interviewed, and the complexity of the evidence are all reasons why. Tom, back to you.
Miguel Almaguer with that new reporting tonight. Miguel, thanks. And a major update tonight in the battle against COVID-19. Florida, once an epicenter of the virus, now reporting the lowest number of COVID cases in the entire country. Governor Ron DeSantis touting the decline as a victory, but health experts there warning the state isn't in the clear just yet. NBC News correspondent Kerry Sanders reports from Florida tonight.
Tonight, for a state that was once the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic in America, a glimmer of hope.
Florida has the lowest COVID infection rate, case rate, and infection rate, or COVID estimate, in the country.
Republican Governor Ron DeSantis touting his state's progress despite repeated and adamant resistance to mask and vaccine mandates. New cases in Florida down a staggering 90% since August, now the lowest in the nation. But Dr. Abram Behrens, president of the Broward County Medical Association, says it's premature for the governor to take a victory lap.
I don't believe Governor DeSantis can claim victory for anything. Any physician that has been dealing with the COVID crisis in Florida or anywhere else truly knows that this is only a temporary lull in the storm.
Nearly 60,000 Floridians have died since the start of the pandemic, the 9th highest death rate per capita in the country. The state accounting for 1 out of every 5 new COVID infections as recently as 2 months ago. Hospitals across Florida pushed to the brink.
It's overwhelming our staff.
And even as cases in the state soared, the governor pushing to keep businesses and restaurants open, banning mask mandates and defying recommendations from the federal government.
So why don't you do your job? Why don't you get this border secure? And until you do that, I don't want to hear a blip about COVID from you. Thank you.
And now he's taking aim at President Biden again, this time over a federal vaccine mandate.
Today, the state of Florida has filed another lawsuit against the Biden administration.
DeSantis suing to block a federal rule that would require all government contractors to get the vaccine by early December, saying the Biden administration is overstepping its authority. But while the future of that mandate rests in the hands of the courts, the majority of Floridians have already opted to roll up their sleeves. More than 73% of Florida's eligible population has been vaccinated, the rate even higher amongst the most vulnerable populations, with nearly 90% of people over the age of 65 getting their shots. Still, doctors are urging residents not to drop their guard.
I think it's premature for anybody to declare victory on COVID right now in any area, any state, any region, any county, any city, because we are not out of the woods yet.
All right, Kerry Sanders joins us now from Cocoa Beach, Florida. And Kerry, Governor DeSantis notably, I remember early on, told local governments he would set uniform protocols across the state. Did that move work?
Well, you know, that's really questionable because medical experts are saying that it's a little early, perhaps, for the governor to politicize a victory based on what he's done. Local governments, mayors, commissioners are still saying that they should be the ones to make these decisions, and they're fearful that this is just a moment and not the end of a pandemic, especially as they know winter is coming and the possibility during winter and folks traveling, especially from the Northeast to this state, may bring with them coronavirus that then spreads again. Tom?
Kerry Sanders for us tonight from Cocoa Beach. Kerry, we appreciate that. And on that last point Kerry was making, we're going to have more later on in the broadcast with one of our medical contributors on COVID and if there's an endemic actually happening. We want to turn out to that assault in the air as American Airlines flight attendant punched by a passenger. The suspect restrained with duct tape and that cross-country flight forced to make an emergency landing. Tonight, the alarming trend of violence on airplanes now growing across the country. Stephanie Gosk has more.
An American Airlines flight from New York to California forced to make an emergency landing in Denver. The airline's CEO speaking out today.
We had one of the worst displays of unruly behavior we've ever witnessed.
A source close to the investigation says a flight attendant accidentally bumped into a passenger and apologized. Soon after, the man walked to the back of the plane and punched the flight attendant twice in the face.
I did see her walk back down the aisle afterwards. She had blood splattered on the outside of her mask.
Passengers say this was the man involved, handcuffed by police on the ground.
This type of behavior has to stop, and the best deterrent is aggressive criminal prosecution.
According to the FAA, there have been nearly 5,000 reports of bad behavior on flights this year. Many were related to mask mandates, but not all. Only 216 have led to law enforcement cases. Crimes in the air are the FBI's jurisdiction.
Do you think there have been enough prosecutions of these incidents?
There have not been nearly enough. DOJ needs to step this up and step it up right now. People need to land in jail.
The president of the union feeling it on a personal level.
Every single flight attendant's heart is with her right now. We all are just working very hard to make sure that no one else has to face this harm.
American Airlines has banned the man from its flights forever. The FBI is investigating. Tonight, the airline is calling on the agency to press criminal charges. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
Stephanie Gosk, we thank her for that report. Earlier on Capitol Hill, the nation's top oil executives today insisted they're not trying to mislead the public about big oil's role in climate change. Under pressure to cut carbon emissions further, the execs today admitted that oil production does indeed play a huge role. Here's NBC's Tom Costello.
On the virtual hot seat today, oil company executives challenged for the first time ever on their company's histories of spreading disinformation about big oil's role in climate change.
It is time for the fossil fuel industry to finally change its ways.
Presented as evidence, this video of an Exxon lobbyist secretly recorded by Greenpeace activists, which they say shows how Exxon tries to undermine climate change policies.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes.
For decades, Democrats say oil execs have denied or downplayed a climate change link, despite their own internal research showing the fossil fuel connection. But today, every oil company executive acknowledged the industry does indeed contribute to climate change.
Climate change is real, and the use of fossil fuels contributes to it.
This is a defining challenge for our generation, absolutely.
But the executives deny engaging in disinformation to fight climate change policy. Meanwhile, demand for oil and gas is surging. Unleaded now averaging $3.39 a gallon, up from $2.14 a year ago to $81 in 2019. Natural gas jumping 30% this winter.
This hearing is simply a distraction from the crises that the Biden administration's policies have caused for the American people.
Gas prices really sky high right now everywhere you go. Tom Costello joins us now. Tom, I want to talk about something else that happened at that hearing that people are talking about, concern about the oil companies belonging to a certain type of lobbying group that has actively fought climate change policies, even as these oil companies at times profess to believe in climate change.
Yeah, and the American Petroleum Institute, that's the lobbying group, the oil companies belong to it, all of them, and API say they believe that climate change is real, and they acknowledge that fossil fuels contribute to it. But API has also kind of lobbied against green initiatives, against, for example, anything that might work against oil companies' advantage. And as a result, these oil companies are accused of saying one thing where they acknowledge that climate change is real and they're working to deal with it. On the other hand, paying a lobbying group that is working to undermine some of those green initiatives. They were asked to dissolve that relationship or walk away from the API, and none of them pledged to do that.
Tom Costello for us. Tom, thank you. Now to escalating tensions with China. For the first time, top U.S. General Mark Milley acknowledging that the country is testing hypersonic missiles and saying the development is very close to a Sputnik moment. He spoke to Bloomberg TV.
What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic weapon system, and it is very concerning.
NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Cubey joins us now. So, Courtney, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, John Hyden, backed up Milley today and echoed his concerns. Why are these hypersonics so threatening, and where does U.S. technology stand in comparison with China at this point?
So the reason that the test in August that's been getting so much attention lately is concerning is just the distance that it went. It's not a surprise that China has or is testing hypersonics, but this one that they tested back in August literally spanned the globe. It went very far, very fast, and despite the fact it was technically a failure because it didn't actually land where it was supposed to, every time China tests, they're learning. The concern here is that with now having the ability to fly so far, so fast, that is a significant advancement. That's why people like General Milley are acknowledging this and even comparing it in some way to Sputnik as a major advancements for the Chinese military. General John Hyten, the vice chairman today, also put into context exactly how many tests the Chinese have done versus the United States on hypersonics. He said that in the past 5 years or so, China has tested hundreds of hypersonics. In the same time period, the U.S. has tested about 9. That's what's so concerning here, is the fact that it now looks like China, with these testing, it looks like they're really winning the race to test and field a hypersonic missile, Tom.
So I guess the question then is, Courtney, how do we detect these hypersonics? Do we have those defense systems in place? And what does the top brass in the military want to happen now?
So the fact that they are so difficult to detect is actually why there's so much secrecy about these kinds of tests. The U.S. military and the U.S. government doesn't really want China to know that they can see these tests happening and that they can track them, where they start, where they land, everything. That is all very highly classified. But beyond that, one of the big concerns is the fact that these hypersonic missiles are virtually impossible to stop. So they have to be stopped as they're taking off in the boost phase of a test or of a launch. The U.S. doesn't doesn't have a whole lot of capabilities. And General Hyten was also expressing his concern about that today. He said that the United States government needs to really ramp up their research and development and their acquisition and test things like lasers and directed energy and ways to stop these hypersonic missiles. When you look at how the U.S. missile defense system is set up, it's really geared towards an ICBM, a ballistic missile, the kinds of things that we see North Korea and others launching. It's not geared towards a hypersonic. The United States government, the United States military, according to John Hyten, really need to work on their acquisition and get ready because China is testing and fielding these long-range hypersonics now, Tom.
All right, Courtney Q before us. Courtney, thank you. We turn now to the sexual abuse case shocking the NHL. Kyle Beach, a former Chicago Blackhawks player, coming forward as the so-called John Doe who filed a lawsuit against the team after he says he was sexually assaulted by a former coach. We do want to warn you, aspects of this story are graphic. Maura Barrett reports.
Former Chicago Blackhawks player Kyle Beach now coming forward.
My life was changed forever.
Publicly identifying himself as John Doe, the player who filed a lawsuit against the team, saying he was sexually assaulted by former video coach Brad Aldrich in 2010 during the team's Stanley Cup run.
When they won, to see him paraded around, lifting the cup at the parade, at the team pictures, at the celebrations, it made me feel like nothing. It made me feel like I didn't exist.
For the first time, Beach addressing the sexual abuse case rocking the sport.
It's destroyed me from the inside out. And I want everybody to know in the sports world and in the world that you're not alone.
According to an internal probe commissioned by the team, Aldrich told Beach, quote, "I'll make sure you never play in the NHL or walk again," if Beach did not engage in sexual activity with him.
So I was scared, mostly. I was fearful. I had had my career threatened. I felt alone and dark. It's tough to recall these moments. I think mostly I felt like I was alone and there was nothing I could do and nobody I could turn to for help.
That same report finding senior team officials failed to respond promptly to Beach's allegations of sexual abuse because the team was in the midst of their playoff run. General manager Stan Bowman resigning from the Blackhawks, the league fining the team $2 million. The Blackhawks responding to Beach's interview in a statement, saying no playoff game or championship is more important than protecting our players and staff from predatory behavior. According to his lawyer, Aldrich denies the allegations in the report. He's also convicted of sexually assaulting a 16-year-old player in Michigan. Beach, emotional, addressing that other player.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't do more when I could. And because of what happened to him, it gave me the power and the sense of urgency to take action to make sure it wouldn't happen to anybody else. So I'm sorry, and I thank you.
Maura Barrett joins us now from Chicago. Maura, we just saw that heart-wrenching emotion from Beach. What steps is the NHL taking now to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, Tom, right now the NHL appears to be trying to figure out what they missed. This afternoon, the NHL commissioner met with Joel Quenneville. He is now the coach of the Florida Panthers, but he was the head coach of the Blackhawks at the time of the 2010 incident. And he is one of those people that Beach says was a senior official who says was prioritizing that Stanley Cup win. But Quenneville says that he wasn't aware of the allegations until this summer, and it remains to be seen whether he will keep his current coaching job. Tom?
All right, Maura Barrett live for us from Chicago. Maura, thank you. Still ahead tonight, the reality TV star held at gunpoint, the home invasion targeting a real housewife while her young children were there but were just learning from police. Plus, Facebook changing its name, the major announcement from Mark Zuckerberg today and what it means for the app. And all trick, no treat. The warning ahead of Halloween over products that look like your favorite food items but actually contain THC. Vaughn Hilliard joins Top Story tonight with one parent's nightmare after their child ate a cereal infused with the marijuana compound. You're watching Top Story. We're just getting started. Ahead of Halloween weekend, a warning from the FDA and healthcare professionals. Beware of the candy and treats that wind up in your kids' possession. At least one child has been hospitalized after consuming a snack infused with cannabis. NBC News Now correspondent Vaughn Hilliard has a look at these products that look so much like classic candies and treats.
I thought my daughter was overdosing. She was dying. I thought she was going to die.
That is Amina Sarir talking about her daughter, Maya, just 3 years old.
I'm looking at her and her lips like are blue, and she's pale and she won't wake up.
Maya rushed to the hospital after eating what the family says they thought were Applejack cereal. But in actuality, the cereal was off-brand and infused with Delta-8 THC.
You didn't know what Delta-8 THC was?
No, at that point, I had no idea what that was.
Delta-8 THC is a compound derived from cannabis. And with Halloween this weekend, there are increased concerns for children.
Make sure that everything has unified sealed packaging. And of course, these products look dangerously like the real candy.
The New York Attorney General this week issuing a warning for the deceptive cannabis products sold in snack packaging. Many of them in wrappings that look like classic snacks, like Sour Patch, but also other treats like Doritos and Cheetos.
And in candies like these, your classic peach ring gummies, your rainbow strips, and your old school chocolate bar, all resembling so closely the real thing.
Delta-8 THC is on the market. It's not currently illegal at the federal level because it's derived from hemp. But last month, the FDA sent out a warning about the drug. These products have not been evaluated or approved by the FDA for safe use in any context, adding they should especially be kept out of reach of children and pets.
In a bag of these Delta-8 THC-infused peach rings with 300 milligrams of Delta-8, just how potent is that for kids?
It can be incredibly potent, especially in a smaller, younger child.
In 2021, the FDA says more than 250 calls were made to national poison control centers for Delta-8 THC exposure among minors. Maya did not wake up at that hospital for 30 hours, her mom says, and then experience hallucinations for multiple nights after.
It looks exactly like the normal kids product that you would buy. So please be aware. Please look at the products.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard joins us now. Vaughn, with Halloween here, and besides Halloween, this is just kind of scary being a parent. I have two questions for you. One, does the packaging make it easy for kids to get in there? And two, how accessible are these?
Exactly. I mean, most states have yet to ban Delta-8 THC here. So you can go down the road and purchase it as long as you're 21 years or older. But you saw just how similar that packaging looks. And that is why those parents you heard from there, Amina, saying she had no idea. They kept looking at the packaging before they finally realized it was THC infused here. But one other note, though, there is something important. Parents shouldn't expect people to just be freewheeling putting these in the Halloween containers.
Yeah.
For just that candy, that chocolate bar, $30. And $25 for those peach gummies there. So that's a high price for somebody to just go be tossing them out.
And the packaging, is it hard to get into, or is it pretty easy for kids?
It's pretty easy. It's just like any other candy bar you'd open up.
All right, that's scary. All right, Vaughn Hilliard, thank you so much for that. Coming up, reaching a boiling point, parents clashing with school administrators across the country. And tonight, the school president caught on a hot mic swearing at a parent who was pushing back against vaccine and mask mandates. But some good news on the COVID front, cases dropping dramatically and more Americans are lining up for booster shots. Could this signal the end of the pandemic? Dr. Uche Blackstock is here to help us answer that question. She's on Top Story tonight, answering a lot of big, important issues. Stay with us. Back now with Top Story's news feed, and we begin with the New York State trooper facing murder charges in the death of an 11-year-old girl. Christopher Baldwin, accused of ramming a car carrying Monica Goods and her family last December. This after police say they fled a traffic stop. That car flipping over, throwing Monica from the vehicle. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Baldwin also facing manslaughter and reckless endangerment charges. The investigation tonight into the home invasion involving reality TV star Dorrit Kemsley. Sources confirming to NBC News the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star was held at gunpoint inside her Encino home. Her two young children reportedly also home at the time. Police say the three suspects took an undisclosed amount of property. So far, no arrests have been made. Facebook is changing its corporate name to Meta. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says he wanted the new brand to focus beyond social media. It comes right after a trove of leaked documents revealed how the company ignored internal warnings about the harmful and negative impacts of its practices. The popular app will still be called Facebook. And Senator Mitt Romney getting into the Halloween spirit today. The Utah Republican sharing a series of tweets of him dressed up as beloved TV character Ted Lasso. He walked the halls of Congress in the costume and even employed Senator Kyrsten Sinema to help recreate a scene. Ted Lasso, of course, played by Jason Sudeikis, who you may remember impersonated Mitt Romney on SNL during his presidential run. Romney today saying he was, quote, returning the favor. We're going to turn now back to the fight against COVID-19 with cases dropping around the country and millions of kids on the verge of being eligible for vaccinations. Is this the beginning of the end for COVID-19 in the U.S.? Here to help us answer that question, Dr. Uche Blackstock joins us now on set. Welcome back to Top Story. Great to have you here in studio. So I want to show you two pieces of data, and I want you to walk us through it. So the first is, this is a map of the United States, and it shows where cases are right now and the change in new cases. That green right there, that's where cases are decreasing, and we can see that's a lot of the country right there. The gray, that's where cases have plateaued, and you just see two states where cases have increased. The next piece of data I want to show you, Dr. Blackstock, is this. This is the 7-day rolling average right here, the moving average of new cases in the U.S. We go all the way to the right part of that screen, and we see the curve, and we see it coming down right now. So the question to you, is this the beginning of the end?
Right, so that is the million-dollar question that everyone wants to know. I would say that we have to be incredibly cautious at this point. We don't know why these declines happen. We don't know if it's virus biology, human behavior, change in the variant. And so we still have to be cautious about what's to come. I mean,
because we don't think it's the vaccine? We don't think it's more people getting vaccinated?
It could be the vaccine, but we still have a substantial number of people who have not been vaccinated. We need to have between 80 to 90% of the population vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and we are not there yet. So this is not all the vaccine that we're seeing. And we've seen these surges before as well as these declines, and it's unclear why these declines happen. But we know that we're headed into colder weather, drier weather. The virus thrives in this environment. And so I would be concerned about having another surge, especially the fact that we don't have many people vaccinated.
So when we talk about, this next potential surge, it may or may not happen. We have winter coming in. Is that the next test? Is that the last test to know, listen, actually, this might be the beginning of the end?
You know what I would say? I would say that we may see additional surges. They may not be as large as this past surge because we are increasing the number of people who are being vaccinated. The challenge is that we still have people across the world who have not been vaccinated, and because of that, we have increased likelihood for other variants to spread. And so we don't know what is the next variant going to be. Is it going to be worse than the Delta variant? And so while we're headed in a great direction, we've been here before. We've been here several times before. And so that's why I think, masking, all these other mitigation measures are still quite important until we get more people vaccinated.
So when you walked into the studio today, you had your mask on. When do you think you'll be able to walk into the studio? And that's not because there's any rules here, but that's what you want to do. It's it's your choice. When do you think you won't have to wear that mask?
Right. So do you really want to know the answer to that question?
I do. Yeah. I mean, that's why we have you here.
Well, I think it's going to be probably, I would say, 1 to 2 years. And the reason why I say that is because it's going to be a while until the vaccine mandates kick in, and until we get between that 80 to 90% of people vaccinated. But it's going to be a combination of metrics of vaccination rates, hospitalizations, and deaths. And I think once we see all those three indices improve, then we can say and head in the right direction for a long period of time, not just for months, but probably for half a year to a year. Then we could say things are getting better.
When you wear a mask now, knowing what you know, being vaccinated, you're obviously a practicing healthcare professional. Do you wear the mask to protect yourself, or are you still wearing a mask? Is there a part of you wearing the mask because you want to make sure you're not spreading it as well?
So I'm wearing a mask because I have young children who are not yet vaccinated, and I have also an elderly father who is fully vaccinated, but we know that there's still an increased risk for breakthrough infections. So it's really to protect them because we still have widespread transmission. It's still pretty high. I think once we get to lower transmission, more people vaccinated, then we'll be able to take off the mask.
So, over the years, we've seen travelers who come from Asia, parts of China, Japan. When they come over, they've been traveling with masks for years. Do you think Americans will always be traveling like that? Do you think we'll always have sort of that mask either in our pockets or in our purse forever?
I think it may be something to consider just because there may still be regional outbreaks of COVID-19 because it'll be endemic, and there may be pockets pockets that are, have low vaccination rates. And so we may still need to wear masks every now and then. I think we've seen how protective masks are given the flu. We saw last flu season, there was basically non-existent because everyone was wearing masks. So it may be something that we may, every now and then, especially in cold weather, want to take out.
Jay Blackstock answering all those tough questions for us. Doctor, thank you. And we now turn to education and the ongoing contentious school board meetings happening all across the country. Parents intimidating and threatening educators over mask and vaccine mandates and lessons on race. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has more.
Tonight, a California school board president is apologizing after this exchange. A hot mic captured the president swearing at a parent who raised concerns over mask mandates. This incident, the latest in a barrage of contentious moments between educators and parents caught on camera at school board meetings.
No more masks. Keep it calm.
This is illegal.
This is a Hydra virus.
Threats, intimidation, even violence over mask wearing, lessons on race, and more.
The level has gotten to an extreme point of disruption. It creates fear, intimidation, and it needs to stop.
The conflicts spilling over into educators' personal lives. Brenda Sheridan is the school board chairwoman in Loudoun County, Virginia. When we spoke with her this summer, she shared letters that she says she received at her home and voicemails like these.
You are a disgusting piece of shit, Miss Sheridan.
You know your home address is on the internet, don't you? That could be a little scary. Stupid, fat lover.
I have never been afraid to be in my community. I have never thought twice about going anywhere in Loudoun or anywhere in my community. And I stop and think twice now.
Tensions in some districts now reaching a boiling point. Last month, the National School Board Association sent a letter to President Biden calling for federal law enforcement to step in, writing, "These heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism." The move drew immediate backlash from attorney generals and state school boards across the country. Last week, the organization issued an apology saying, quote, "We deeply value not only the work of local school boards, but also the voices of parents who should and must continue to be heard." The walkback hasn't cooled tensions. This exchange over mask wearing at a school board meeting happened in Portland, Oregon, just Tuesday.
I sit down. You are cowards. I will not sit down. I won't comply. You guys are cowards.
We've always had conflict between parents and school leaders.
Jonathan Zimmerman studies how political and social movements shape education. He says the battles playing out now are an old fight in a new form.
But when was the last time that you read about a big battle in a school board over evolution and creation or over school prayer? A lot of that energy that we used to invest in religion has become reinvested in our partisan affiliations.
What can history teach us about how the conflicts that we're seeing today will be resolved?
Well, they're not going to be resolved. I think we should be looking to is our schools to help us teach kids how to engage in those disagreements.
All right, Priscilla Thompson joins us now. And Priscilla, I was asking, how much of this is new and how much of this is everyone has a camera, there's social media amplifying everything. And you were telling me that what you learned from your reporting, a lot of times when these sort of fights break out, there's people that they don't even have kids in the school system. It's just people going here to protest.
Right. And that's what I've seen in covering what's been happening in Loudoun County, where there's sort of this all call put out for everyone to come down to the school board meeting or to call this school board leader or whatever it might be and express their concerns, even though they don't live in the community and may not even have students attending schools in that district. And so social media has certainly changed the way these flashpoints are sort of developing and how these school board members are being treated.
All right, Priscilla, we thank you for that. Now to top stories, Global Watch, and we begin in Thailand, where a woman has been arrested for, it sounds weird, cutting a rope holding two workers suspended on the side of a building. New cell phone video shows the two painters climbing onto a balcony after a couple noticed them dangling. Police say the woman cut the support rope on the 26th floor because she was angry they were doing work outside of her apartment. She's now facing attempted murder charges. And visitors to Amsterdam could soon have a new way to cruise the famed canals. The city now testing small self-driving watercrafts known as rowboat. For now, the electric-powered boat will be used for trash collection in an effort to ease road congestion, but the goal is for them to serve as water taxis as well. All right. Still ahead, the NFL under fire, the investigation into harassment and abuse allegations against the Washington football team. But now the league is refusing to release the results, even to employees. We'll tell you why next. Back now with the NFL under fire, an investigation into the Washington football team's alleged toxic work environment led to a record fine. Now former employees want that report to be made public, but the league is not budging. Here's NBC's Kathy Park.
Tonight, mounting pressure on the NFL to release the findings in a months-long investigation into the Washington football team's workplace culture. Anna Nunez is a former employee who participated in the 2020 inquiry. She alleges that women who work for the team were harassed and abused. A report was issued but not released to the public.
I am feeling definitely a mix of emotions. Right now, there's definitely a emotional exhaustion.
This week, she hand-delivered a letter intended for NFL owners who were in New York for a meeting, demanding transparency and accountability. The letter was signed by a dozen former employees and reads in part, the NFL should not be allowed to encourage employees to come forward at great personal and professional risk to speak to investigators, only to sweep the results of that investigation under the rug.
Good evening.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says the league will not release the results of the report because they want to shield those who spoke out.
The workplace environment at the Washington football team was not what we expect in the NFL, and then held them accountable for that. So we think protecting the people that helped us get to that place, the people that unfortunately had to live through that experience, that we respect them and make sure that we protect them.
We reached out to Goodell's office for comment and have not heard back.
My biggest question is protect us from who? Who are you trying to protect us from?
After the investigation, the NFL fined the Washington football team $10 million, and owner Dan Snyder stepped away from day-to-day operations in July. Snyder has denied any wrongdoing. Melanie Coburn was with the team for years and says her fight isn't over.
We never received any apology or any explanation. Which is why we feel invisible.
Raiders owner Mark Davis wants the findings released too.
Do you want to see it?
Probably, yeah. I think that there should be.
Davis speaking out amid a separate scandal that rocked his team this month when coach John Gruden resigned over offensive emails. Those emails surfaced during this investigation as they were sent to the former president of the Washington football team.
Kathy Park joins us now in studio. So the NFL says they want to shield those who spoke out, essentially protect them. But some say the NFL may be trying to protect themselves as well. And now Congress is looking into this, or potentially looking into this?
Yeah, in fact, they've actually started to look into it. 2 members of Congress have written a letter to Roger Goodell flagging some serious concerns. So they are asking for more documents and communication related to the investigation. And they've actually given the NFL a November 4th deadline to hand all this over. So that's a week from today.
All right, Kathy, thank you for that. When we come back, countdown to Beijing. The Winter Games just 100 days away, but what can fans and athletes expect between the pandemic and the country's political climate? Stay with us. And finally tonight, the countdown is on. Today marks 100 days until the Winter Olympics. Between COVID concerns and political questions that are swirling around the Chinese government, a lot is at stake. Keir Simmons has more.
The opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics stunned the world back in 2008. Now, in just 3 months, China will be back in the spotlight. And so will the world's athletes, nearly 3,000 from 95 nations. One-time wonder kid of snowboarding, Shaun White, has 3 gold medals. Winning a 4th in the same event would make history.
I know what that fire and that drive and motivation can do to you as an athlete.
Team USA's Nathan Chen, a gold medal favorite on the ice.
Triple toe.
Both his parents born in China.
To be able to have the opportunity to go to Beijing for an Olympics is really meaningful.
45% of the athletes will be female, a Winter Games record. Among them, Michaela Schifrin says she could compete in 5 events. This Winter Games set to present another huge challenge for Olympic organisers too. Just like Tokyo last summer, there'll be strict COVID protocols. Athletes must be vaccinated or face a 3-week quarantine. Daily COVID tests will be mandatory. Athletes will be restricted to a closed loop, only travelling to specific destinations. And spectators will be allowed, but only if they are from mainland China. While China's Winter Olympics are set to be held in a very different political climate than the Summer Games. A far more assertive Chinese government stands accused of stealing industrial secrets, human rights abuses and cyber spying. Beijing, in turn, accuses American leaders of China bashing. And yet, in 100 days, it will welcome the world's top athletes, including Team USA, as well as international delegations and dignitaries. As many athletes try to focus only on the sport.
I've been skating since I was 3 years old and spent almost every single waking minute at the ice rink, you know? So when it comes down to it, I just want to focus on my skating and do the best that I can on the ice. And, you know, that's all there is to it. Just focus on my skating.
Olympic organisers hoping global attention focuses on athletic achievement.
It's been my life's work, and I'm so proud that I'm still able to compete on a high level. And I'm gonna give it everything I have for this games.
Now, for 4 straight Winter Olympics up until 2014, Team USA finished in either first or second place. In Pyeongchang, the US was in 4th place. Will they do better in Beijing? We'll be watching. Keir Simmons, NBC News, London.
All right, the countdown is on. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. I will see you right back here tomorrow. Have a great night. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.